is not so flexible because you have to work the time that the ledge sits, for example. And so the legislature is getting ready to rise. It'll rise mid-month. And so right now the rush is on for everything that needs to get in through there. And the fallacy that government employees work 8:15 to 4:30 and there's no other time, it's not true. When the legislature sits, you can work evenings and weekends or early mornings. And there is a fair amount of travel if you're not in Fredericton, for example, so back and forth to meetings or whatever. But in the summer, it's a lot more flexible. What are the opportunities for you in government that I see? I see a lot of opportunity in the policy shop. So every department has a policy shop. Now that shop might be one person or two, or it might be 100. It depends on what department it is. But that's what government departments do. They develop policy, or they review policy, or they revamp policy, or they write new policy, or they're analyzing the environment to know whether or not they need to have a policy. There are positions within departments that are more focused. So while they might have an impact in policy, they're more analytical or actual fact-based. So they may need to have an economist to look at trends and economic impacts of the energy sector in New Brunswick. They would hire an economist because they would want the economist skill. If they're looking at a transaction, so for example, when the former government was looking at selling NB Power, they would be looking for finance people. And you know, we think about academics, but it's interesting that a business student actually went into government with an analysis of that Hydro-Quebec transaction, and he actually got a job with a consulting company to work on that project. So there are opportunities there, and sometimes it just takes an approach, but they are always looking for what I would call content matter experts. There's lots of contract and project work, but you have to be aware that it's going to happen. So that is having a contact in government that might alert you to that. But the other way to do that is take a look at State of the Province address, platform commitments. So it was a no-brainer, right? The Conservative government and their platform commitment had an energy commission. So if you wanted to work on that document, call the Premier's office and say, you know, here's my credentials and I'd like to have some input or some impact there. There's all kinds of press releases, and those projects do have to go out to tender. The other thing that you may or may not know is that the government just recently revamped its policies on agencies, boards, and commissions. So all the agencies, boards, and commissions, NB Power, the New Brunswick System Operator, the Energy and Utilities Board, the new Invest New Brunswick Board, I think the Museum Board was just up. Those are now all advertised. Anybody can apply. They actually go through a selection process. They look at resumes. They're not advertised in the newspaper. There's no press release that comes out. You need to check the government website. So the easiest way to find out what contract work or project work is going out to tender, or what positions are on those agencies, boards, and commissions, is to go on the website and look. So there are specific sites on there. You can search it. It's a pretty user-friendly site. And then submit your application. Because sitting on those agencies, boards, and commissions and doing a good job, if you do a good job, it gets you more work. The conditions of employment, you know, the type of role, it is a bit different. You're not... At the university, you're a bit of an independent contractor. You do your own thing. Government, not so much, right? There is a direct reporting relationship, and there's a requirement at senior levels to supervise and mentor others. And so at the university, you do your own thing and you don't worry about what everybody else is doing. And some behavioral problem among the staff is somebody else's issue, like the deans, right? It's not my problem that I had a fight with the secretary and she told me off. I want you to deal with her for telling me off. It doesn't work that way in government. You'll have direct reports, and so you'll have to have other skills other than your content matter expertise. So you'll have to develop some of those skills. There's opportunity for full-time employment, right? You can apply for jobs. Your best bet is to contact the HR departments in the jurisdictions that you're interested in working in and just have a conversation. What opportunities do you think are available for somebody like me? Could you keep my resume on file? Because very often, if we've got a maternity leave replacement, for example, or we have project work, we'll call our woman is Terry Charter, so I'll call Terry and say, look, I just need somebody to work on this particular project, or I need a mat leave replacement. I don't want to go through the hassle. Do you have somebody who's applied for a job you think that would fit? And she will go through the resumes that she has, and then she'll send me 6 or 7 to take a look at. And if that works, great, and if not, then I'll have to go out. The other thing that you may or may not know is that there is a government internship program, and I apologize, I don't know the whole ins and outs of it, but there's a new piece of policy, and it's available on the website. But if you work for 18 months with government, either on internships or co-ops or some kind of job share as a student or right after you graduate, then you can actually go into a position that becomes open without an open competition. So you're treated like an internal candidate as opposed to the general public. At least in the province of New Brunswick, that's how it works. So that's something to, and that's another thing about understanding what programs are out there, but it requires work because government doesn't get out there and talk about everything that they have, but if you spend enough time looking for it, you can find it. There are secondment opportunities, so if you are at an academic institution, then you can look to see if there's some kind of job sharing that you can do or some kind of secondment arrangement. So for example, if you have contacts within government and they think they might like to try a stint at the university and you think you might like to try a stint at their job, that's a really nice switch, especially if you can just trade off for 3 months or 6 months. Project-based contracts that I talked to you about before, and then this idea of job sharing, which is becoming more and more common between government and the private sector or academic institutions. And I wouldn't just limit those kinds of thoughts about opportunities to government. Those opportunities are available within industry as well. Industry is happy to take and exchange people. They think it's a really interesting idea, and they're becoming more and more open to it because they just want to bring a different perspective to some of the work that they're doing. So the next phase, I'm not really sure, but I know that between those 3 things, there are lots of opportunities that will open up. So the more government and community connections you can build in addition to your academic connections, the better off you will be. So when I went to government, I don't think that they really thought my academic connections would be all that useful to them until we started to do a lot of work on energy policy. And we were actually at the World Energy Congress in Montreal in the summer of last year, about a year ago now actually. And I had done some work in the Middle East, so I had some friends from a couple of the institutions over there, which proved really useful in terms of contract negotiations for some of our private sector partners. So don't sell yourself short. The fact that you have global connections is really important to the private sector, even maybe sometimes more so than your subject matter expertise. It's your contacts that they're after. I know out of our Masters of Business program, the Canes hired 4 people, and they were good students, and they had great, records, academic records, but they didn't hire them for that. They hired them because they needed connections back into their countries of origin because they wanted to move their business there. So,